Welcome to Indiana News Desk. I'm Joe Wren. Indiana is once again at the center of a heated national debate after Governor Mike Pence signed a controversial abortion bill yesterday. The wide-ranging legislation prohibits abortions under certain conditions and requires aborted fetuses to be buried or cremated. This isn't a bill that was split along party lines. Some Republicans spoke out against the legislation and how it moved through the State House. Pence said in a statement the legislation protects the unborn while allowing an exception for the life of the mother. As Barbara Brosier reports, while some tout the bill as a way to prevent discrimination, opponents worry about the potential health and legal ramifications.
The happiness on this 8-year-old's face reflects the impact he has on his family's life.
If you talk to most families who have a child with Down syndrome, they'll tell you that this child has become their greatest joy, right, and is a great blessing in their lives.
Tommy is the youngest of 5 children and the only one living with Down syndrome. But to Mary O'Callahan, he's just like the rest of her kids. That's why she's in favor of House Enrolled Act 1337, which, among other things, bans abortion solely because of the fetus's race, sex, or disability.
There was something probably about the immediacy, right, of holding this sweet baby in my arms. She was so beautiful. And I was really, frankly, heartbroken to contemplate the enormous loss of lives of children who look just like him.
O'Callahan has a PhD in developmental psychology and testified at the State House in favor of the abortion ban earlier this year. She believes allowing people to abort fetuses because of disabilities is a form of discrimination.
I don't think we as a society want to be in the position of making statements about the relative value of one life versus another. And I don't think that was the original intent of Roe v. Wade.
While supporters of the bill say it will prevent discrimination, opponents argue it does the opposite.
It is more likely in case of race and sex bans that pregnant people of color are the ones who will be most targeted by these bans because it is those stereotypes against those communities that will play out in the doctor's office.
Dozens of women from the grassroots group Indie Feminists delivered petitions to the State House last week, asking Governor Mike Pence to veto the legislation. They're unhappy with how, among other things, legislators handled the issue. After a Senate bill focusing on the abortion ban failed to get a hearing in the House, lawmakers added the measure to a House bill focusing on the disposal of fetal remains.
We're dealing with mandates that, rather than supporting people at a time when they most need accurate information, compassionate support, are designed to shame, demean, coerce, for no reason at all other than to attempt to discourage people from accessing what is a safe and legal procedure.
Legal experts say Indiana's abortion law will be among the most restrictive in the country. It's part of a trend that started a few years ago when there was a broad shift to Republican-controlled state legislatures. And they say Indiana's bill has the potential to create a chilling effect.
If because you're worried you'll be prosecuted, even when you're doing the right thing, even when you're within the law, if the concern is the law could be interpreted, it's susceptible to different understandings, and a court might interpret it differently and subject you to liability, that's a reason to strike a law down.
There are also questions about how the legislation will be enforced. It would require proof that a woman sought an abortion for one of the prohibited reasons, something that could be hard to demonstrate.
In all pregnancies, there's a risk to the woman's health. So a woman could always say, I'm choosing an abortion because of the risk to my health. And as a constitutional matter, you cannot trade off one person's health for another.
For Indiana News Desk, I'm Barbara Brosier.
Joining us now is Dawn Johnson. She's a professor at the Maurer School of Law. She has worked closely with reproductive rights during her career, including time with the ACLU. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So now, this law prevents mothers from having abortions based on sex, race, or disability. What are some of the other restrictions in this bill?
Well, I do think that list of banned reasons is the part that strikes at the core of Roe versus Wade, as the Supreme Court has reaffirmed it. But in the context of the whole starting point, Indiana is already one of the most restrictive states in the country in terms of restricting access to abortion. This law, in addition to the ban on those reasons, has a slew of other restrictions that are trap laws, admitting privileges requirements, requirements that fetal and embryonic tissue be disposed of, whether it's from an abortion or a miscarriage, by burial or internment rather than the traditional methods. And so it's requiring the doctor to offer the woman to listen to the heartbeat, view an ultrasound, a whole slew of restrictions, a whole kitchen sink really, on top of the restrictions we already have. Though I do want to say the reasons ban is really what strikes at the core of Roe and makes it clear, as a constitutional law professor, you know, that's what I see as seeking to really overrule the core of the liberty right that's in the Constitution.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask about. Planned Parenthood of Indiana and Kentucky say they're outraged and alarmed by the law.
Yes.
They plan to file a lawsuit to block it. What do you think?
Well, there's no question that many of these provisions are unconstitutional, especially, and here I'd like to just put my constitutional law professor hat on for a moment and explain that the Constitution protects the right of individual liberty in private, personal decision-making about highly important matters. So that includes the right to decide when and whether to have a children based on your own consultation with your doctor, your loved ones, your family members, whether or not to use contraception. Earlier in our history, the government would sterilize forcibly certain people. Some countries forced women to have abortions. Here, procreative liberty is protected in the Constitution, and it's the same provision that protects the right to marry and the right to have sexual intimacy with people you love, regardless of whether you're the same or different sex. So that's the liberty is what this strikes at the core of, the liberty of private personal decision making.
Well, thank you very much for being here today. Appreciate you
Thank you for
joining
having
us.
me.
Okay.